Chapter 1. My Idol. Hey, what's up? Ankah Miller called out to the kid with the skateboard, his eyes scanning the graffitied alleyway. The skateboarder, not much younger than Ankah's 15 years, paused mid-trick and nodded. Nothing much, just cruisin'. You see any action around here lately? Ankah's question was casual, but the eager glint in his eyes betrayed his intent. The skateboarder, used to the local chit-chat, didn't miss a beat. Nah, man, just the usual. He shrugged, kickflipped his board, and disappeared around the corner. Ankah's gaze lingered, hoping for a glimpse of the one he idolized above all others, Spider-Woman. With a sigh, he shoved his hands into the pockets of his worn-out hoodie and continued his patrol. The sun had set an hour ago, leaving the alley in a dance of shadow and light from the flickering street lamps. Ankah's dreadlocks swung as he moved, his dark skin almost blending with the shadows. His heart thumped in his chest, a mix of excitement and the anticipation of danger that always seemed to follow her. His phone buzzed, and he pulled it out, expecting another notification from his homemade hero tracker app. But it was just a text from his mom, reminding him to be home before curfew. As he pocketed the phone, the distant sound of a scuffle reached his ears. Ankah's senses sharpened, and he broke into a sprint. The alley opened up onto a street where the neon lights of a convenience store cast a sickly glow. The sound grew louder, thumps, grunts, and the unmistakable clang of metal on pavement. He skidded to a stop, his eyes widening at the sight that unfolded before him. A figure in a sleek, white and black suit with pink linings was pinned against the store's brick wall, struggling against the unyielding grip of a monstrous creature with the body of a man and the head of a rhinoceros. The creature was none other than Rhino, a well-known criminal from the pages of Spider-Man's rogues gallery. And the figure he had trapped, Spider-Woman herself, her costume ripped and her usual confidence wavering. Gritting his teeth, Ankah knew he had to do something. He wasn't a hero, not yet. But he couldn't just stand by and watch his idol fall. He slipped his backpack off and rummaged through it, his hands shaking. Inside was a collection of gadgets he'd put together over months of tinkering, his own makeshift utility belt of sorts. Most were useless, but a few had proven helpful in the past. His eyes fell on a small metal device that looked like a flashlight. It was actually a sonic emitter, capable of producing high-frequency sounds that could disorient and distract. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. With a deep breath, Ankah flipped the switch and aimed the emitter at the ground between Rhino's feet. The moment the piercing noise filled the air, the beast roared in frustration and stumbled back. Spider-Woman took the opportunity to slip free, her eyes scanning the scene for the source of the sound. They locked onto Ankah, who was standing there, trembling slightly, the device in his hand. For a moment, she was surprised, but then she recognized him, the kid who had been following her around for months. Annoyed, she spun a web and swung towards him. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice tight with irritation. "You could get hurt." Ankah stepped back, holding up his hands in defense. I just wanted to help," he stuttered. I know you can handle it, but I had to do something." The sonic device fell from his hand and clattered to the ground. Spider-Woman's eyes softened, just a little. "Thanks, kid," she murmured before turning back to the snarling Rhino. "But this is my fight." She leapt back into the fray, her movements swift and precise. Ankah watched, his heart racing, as she dodged the creature's massive, charging form. He knew he should leave, that he wasn't ready to be involved in this kind of danger. But his feet remained rooted to the spot, his eyes glued to the battle. He had to make sure she was okay. He had to be there, just in case she needed him again. The rhino-like villain lunged, and Gwen barely avoided the impact. The force of the blow sent a tremor through the ground, knocking over a nearby trash can. As she rolled away, Ankah saw an opening, a momentary weakness in Rhino's stance. Without thinking, he dashed forward and hurled one of his gadgets, a compact grappling hook, at the villain's armored shoulder. It stuck with a satisfying thwack, and Rhino roared in surprise. The distraction was all Gwen needed. She shot a webline at the grappling hook, yanking the creature off balance, and delivered a swift kick to its snout. The fight raged on, the two adversaries locked in a dance of speed and brute strength. Gwen's spider-like agility was a stark contrast to Rhino's relentless charges. Ankah watched, his heart in his throat, as she deftly avoided each collision. Each near miss brought a gasp from his lips, each successful dodge a sigh of relief. Despite his fear, he felt a spark of excitement. This was the closest he had ever been to real heroism, and it was intoxicating. The battle spilled into the street, forcing cars to swerve and honk in alarm. Pedestrians scattered, some filming the chaos on their phones, others diving into nearby shops. The sound of crunching metal and breaking glass filled the air. Ankah knew he couldn't just stand there. He had to do more. He pulled out another gadget, a smoke bomb. It was a risk, but if he could obscure Rhino's vision, maybe he could give Gwen the upper hand. With a quick flick of his wrist, he tossed the smoke bomb at the creature's feet. The moment the smoke billowed up, Gwen took action, swinging from a webline to deliver a powerful blow to Rhino's unprotected eyes. The creature roared in pain, stumbling backward into a lamppost with enough force to snap it in two. The street light flickered and went out, casting the area into deeper shadow. Through the haze, Ankah saw Gwen land gracefully on the hood of a car. She wiped the sweat from her brow and turned to him, her eyes flashing with a mix of gratitude and annoyance. "You need to leave," she said firmly. "This isn't a game, and you're not ready for this." But Ankah felt a surge of determination. He wasn't about to leave now. "I can help," he insisted. "I have more gadgets. I've studied you. I know your fighting style." Gwen hesitated, her gaze sweeping over the teenager's makeshift hero gear. Then she nodded, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "All right," she said, her voice strained. "But stay back and only when I say so, okay?" Ankah nodded vigorously. The adrenaline coursed through him as he took his place behind a dumpster, ready to jump into action. The smoke cleared, revealing a dazed and enraged Rhino. Gwen gave him a nod, and with a shared understanding, they prepared for the next round of their battle. This was his chance to prove himself, not just to her, but to himself. He was going to help Spider-Woman, even if it was just by staying out of the way and providing that one crucial moment of distraction. The sound of Rhino's charging footsteps grew louder, and Gwen took to the air, her webs trailing behind her. Ankah's eyes darted around, searching for another opportunity to assist. As the villain stumbled through the wreckage, Ankah spotted a metal rod sticking out from a nearby construction site. It was heavy, but if he could somehow get it to Gwen, it could be the key to turning the tide. He took a deep breath and waited for the perfect moment. With a flick of her wrist, Gwen sent a web shooting towards Rhino, wrapping around his thick neck. The creature bellowed, trying to shake her off, but she clung on, her legs wrapped around his armored torso. Ankah saw his chance. He sprinted towards the rod, his heart racing. He had to time this just right. As Gwen's webline tightened, Ankah swung the rod with all his might, aiming for the base of Rhino's skull. The impact was tremendous, and the creature staggered, giving Gwen the opening she needed to deliver a final blow. The fight ended with a thud as Rhino collapsed, unconscious, to the ground. Gwen looked over at Ankah, her eyes wide with surprise and respect. "Nice shot," she said, a genuine smile finally breaking through the tension. Ankah's cheeks flushed with pride, his chest puffing out slightly. "Thanks," he murmured, trying to sound casual. For a moment, the two of them just stood there, the echoes of the fight slowly fading into the background noise of the city. Gwen pulled her mask up slightly, wiping the grime and sweat from her brow. Ankah felt his heart racing, unable to believe he'd just played a part in taking down one of Spider-Woman's most feared foes. "You've got some guts, kid," she said, the annoyance in her voice replaced by something closer to admiration. "But you've got to be more careful. What if you got hurt?" Ankah shrugged, his heart still racing. "I had to do something. You saved me once. It's the least I could do to return the favor." He gestured to the scar on his forehead, a faded reminder of the day the alien invasion had brought them together. Gwen's eyes softened at the mention of that day. "Look, Ankah, I appreciate the help, but you can't just throw yourself into danger like this." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Do you know who I really am? Ankah's eyes widened. You're Gwen Stacy. He'd heard rumors, but he'd never dared to believe they were true. The idea that his classmate could be the hero he'd put on a pedestal was almost too much to handle. Yes, she said, her voice barely audible. And if anyone finds out, it could put both of us in a really bad position. So, keep this between us, okay? Ankah nodded, his mind racing with the implications of her revelation. I won't tell anyone, he promised, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. But, can I help you again? Gwen sighed, looking at him with a mix of exasperation and amusement. You really want this, don't you? More than anything, Ankah replied, his voice earnest. She studied him for a moment before nodding. Okay, she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. But if you're going to be a sidekick, she said, the word sounding foreign to both of them, you've got to train. You can't just jump into battle unprepared. Ankah's eyes lit up. You'll train me. If you're serious, she said, her tone firm. But you've got to keep up and you can't tell anyone. Not your friends, not your family, no one. He nodded, his heart racing with excitement. I swear. Gwen handed him a small card with a web-like design. This is a secure number. Call it when you need help, or if you have information. But only if it's important. Ankah took the card, feeling the weight of the responsibility in his palm. Got it. As she swung away into the night, Ankah couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and terror. He'd just been accepted into the world of heroes he'd always admired from afar. The world of Gwen Stacy, the real Spider-Woman. He looked down at the card, knowing that his life was about to change forever. The next morning, Ankah woke up early, his mind racing with the events of the previous night. He had school, but all he could think about was training, about becoming something more than just an ordinary kid with a crush on a superhero. He quickly got dressed and headed to the local gym, his backpack filled with gear. The card in his pocket felt like a secret treasure, a ticket to a life of danger and excitement. As he worked out, pushing himself harder than ever before, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of training Gwen had in mind. Would he be fighting alongside her, or would he just be running errands and helping with intel? Either way, he was ready. He'd studied her moves, her tactics, and her gear. He knew he had a lot to learn, but he was determined to prove himself. The days turned into weeks, and Ankah found himself balancing school, his new training regimen, and keeping his secret from everyone. It was exhausting, but every time he talked to Gwen, every time she thanked him for his help, it was worth it. He was a part of something bigger than himself, and nothing could take that away from him. One evening, as he was leaving the gym, his phone buzzed. He checked the display, his heart leaping when he saw it was Gwen. Ankah, she said, her voice urgent, I need you. And with those two words, Ankah knew that his life was about to take a wild turn. He was going to be tested in ways he never thought possible. But he was ready. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had a purpose, like he belonged in a world of heroes. And he wasn't about to let Gwen, or himself, down. Chapter 1 End.